Get started. Does that sound good? All right, welcome everyone. We're so happy to have you with us. We're so happy to have Karen with us and Wayne Mennecke, who will be performing her exercises that she goes over with us. And I just want to show you on the sponsor screen here, you'll notice that there's lilacs beside the house. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that in just a minute, but they're very pretty, so take a look at that. And now I'm going to come back. And there we go. Good. All right, I'm just gonna have everyone mute if you wouldn't mind, just so that we make sure that we can hear Karen and Wayne when they get started. And welcome, thank you for being with us. So first of all, I wanna start off by saying thank you to Karen and thank you to Wayne. As you saw, we do have sponsors for a lot of our events, but for these events, Karen and Wayne have actually volunteered to be with us tonight, and we appreciate it so much. So thank you to them.
Anytime.
We're getting such a big crowd, just one second. Okay. There we go. All right. And I also wanted to start off by saying thank you so much to everyone who's been donating. We appreciate it so much. As you know, we've been closed since the quarantine started. Our museum has been closed. And our museum is located in Huntington, New York, and it is the birthplace of Walt Whitman. It's a house that was built by his father over 200 years ago, still standing. He was an excellent carpenter, and we love sharing that with people. So it's been really difficult for us not being able to do that, but a beautiful thing has happened where we've had poets. We have Karen here with us tonight sharing her talent for acting, and performance and giving advice on performance. And all these people are volunteering to help us stay with our community, to grow our community through Zoom. We've been growing every single week, and we're just so thankful for that. And we're so thankful to anyone who donates to us. We're actually planning a Donator Appreciation Day. It's in the works and it'll be on Zoom as well. But my really good news is that we finally got the green light. We'll be opening on Monday only for the outdoor part of our museum, but that alone is just such refreshing news. 4th of July was last weekend, and a lot of people actually came to our parking lot and took pictures because they wanted to be closer to Whitman and to be thinking about him on the anniversary of the day that he self-published Leaves of Grass, which of course speaks so much about democracy in a way that still feels very contemporary. So many people came, we saw pictures on Facebook, and it just made us feel so great that we can still have a way to share him with the public. And if you visit our museum, we're gonna be open actually every day, 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. So it's a major shift for us, and we're just planning it. And you can see the outside of the birthplace. Those lilacs that I showed you actually were there in Whitman's time. And the first time that Whitman came to visit the place where he was born, because he moved when he was 4 years old. So it wasn't until he was older that he made a little pilgrimage from Brooklyn to see the house. He saw those lilacs. And of course, they come up in a few of his poems, definitely inspiration for him and thinking about, youthfulness and innocence, and they come up a few times. So please join us for that. I also wanted to say we have a beautiful brick circle in the back on the lawn there that you could also see. And we're actually accepting orders for bricks that you can have inscribed up to 3 lines. And it could be for a special person. It could be a Whitman quote, anything that you'd like. And I'm gonna be sharing links for all of that and for donating and for our other upcoming events, because we have a lot of them. So please check those out as well. And as I'm talking, I'm realizing I need to share a link for Karen tonight, and I'm gonna post it right now. Oops. And I just wanna make sure everyone knows that they can open up that link and see all the poems that will be mentioned here tonight. There we go. All right, and that will link you to our website, and then you can read along with the poems as Wayne is performing them. Okay. And I just want to very briefly go over our other upcoming events, just so you have a taste of what's to come. And they're all going to be on Zoom still, even though the lawn is open right now. We want to be sure everyone is safe. Even when you do come to visit us right now, we're going to maintain social distancing and take all the precautions we can to keep everyone safe. All right. So next week on Thursday, which is July 16th, we have Dr. Jack Coulahan with us, and he's actually the president of our board. And we're so honored to have him with us to talk about his book release. The book is called The Talking Cure, and it's his 30 years of healing experience that he'll share with us through storytelling and poetry. And we hope that you can join us for that. And the following week on July 23rd, we have Shark Minus Mother. And it's 3 poets reading from their recently released books. They were released during the quarantine. And Shark Minus Mother is actually a play on the title of all of their books. So we hope you'll join us for that as well. The following week on the 30th, another Thursday, we have local poet Russ Green, who, if you've come to our events before, you might have met him. He's amazing. He does a lot for the community. He puts together a lot of community poetry events. So happy to have him with us. And then the following day, and we just added this week, we're going to have Whitman scholar Edie Folsom with us. And he's actually going to be talking about Whitman's relationship with race during his time. As we know, he lived during the Civil War. So it is a really important topic for us to be talking about right now. There's been some debate about Whitman sculptures, as we rethink who our heroes are and who, did what during the Civil War. It's really important that we look at all the facts, and Ed Folsom is absolutely going to share that with us and give us all the factual information so that we can make our own decisions about how we feel. And it'll also be a discussion. So that's going to be amazing. I'm so excited that we just added that. So please join us. It's not even on our website yet, but it will be soon. And then other events you can look up on the website. I don't want to take too much time, but so you have that website now. So make sure you open that for Karen's poems that she's going to be demonstrating tonight with Wayne. And also, if you were here last week, we had Wayne Mennecke with us, and he did Walking with Whitman, which is one of our most popular series that's been going on for 10 years. And Wayne did an outstanding job. Again, on Zoom, everything's different. Karen talks about that a little bit too. Everything's changed, right? On Zoom, how you read, how comfortable you feel. But Wayne knocked it out of the park last week. So he's great to be giving us these exercises this week. All right. So Karen will be introducing 3 sections of exercises demonstrated by Wayne. The first one will be putting the poem first. The second will be what the poem asks, sound and sight clues. And the third will be how to return to your focus and objective, what you want listeners to get. And then afterwards, there'll be a conversation between Karen and Wayne, a little bit about the exercises that you just watched. And then we'll have a Q&A. So definitely think about what your questions are. It's always on the spot at the end of these events. So it's really good to sort of write down your questions as we go, and then we'll be able to take them at the end. All right, so thank you for joining us. And I'm so happy to introduce Karen De Mauro. Here we go, Karen. There we go.
Oh, welcome, and thank you so much. I have to give a shout out to people I've not seen in 40 years. My first students who taught me how to read and teach poetry, Beth Crane, David Duddy, the members of my writers group who float my boat and make everything work, and my sisters. We all come from this community that makes these things happen. And Wayne and Caitlin and I practiced a lot yesterday, and we've slightly changed the scope of the workshop so that it will be much more helpful, because we want this to be for you. And because everybody's poetry and speaking style is so different, we can't possibly in one night show you how to perform poetry in the spirit of the world. We just can't. So as we worked on what would be most useful, was really helpful. So I'll be talking, Wayne will be talking, and Wayne is a wonderful poet in his own right, a great, great teacher, but he's doing a really special job tonight, which is he's allowing himself to be seen, practicing, vulnerable, figuring it out, noticing if it doesn't work. And I can't imagine a greater gift to the art community than someone willing to do this. So to you, Wayne, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Karen.
So I'm going to talk for about just a few minutes about what the focus of tonight is. And Caitlin, I'm going to ask you to stop me in a half hour so that we're sure we get everything done that really matters most to the people who are viewing. So poetry and every kind of performance is about being seen and heard. You have to be seen, even with, you know, the wrinkles, the marks you didn't know you had. You have to be seen and be willing to be seen as you are, and to be heard. Being heard on Zoom is a whole ball of wax. And it's an adjustment from our authenticity. So when we are poets, we need to be seen and heard. And that's our primary job. The next thing is I'm going to be looking at notes so I don't forget something, which means I will look distracted. And I will be writing so I can prioritize what needs to happen yet. So I am not the role model for how this ought to go. I'm the role model for doing this with people, a buddy system, not leaving yourself stranded trying to figure out how to be good in public, because I haven't figured that out and I'm 71 years old. Okay, so the other thing that's really important is I have biases. And they're biases based on my own performing and coaching career, which is I feel that the poem should be first. The poem lives between me and you. It lives in this space. In live performance, it lives between the poet and the audience. On Zoom, it lives in this weird space slightly behind your monitor. So the first trick I just recommend is my magic mask. So the hardest thing to be seen is to remember to look up at the little light. So this is the magic mask, and you put this whole part, I know it looks obscene, on the light. And then you look into the eyes. That will remind you simply to stay focused, not like this, so we don't get the dread at the top of the head syndrome, but so that you look as if you are looking at people. So it's really kind of disconcerting. The next thing that's important is if we want to be good, God knows we want to be good. I want to be the best thing since sliced bread fat. But if we are focused on being good, instead of on serving the poem, we become self-conscious and not job conscious. And we want to be job conscious. So all the exercises tonight are to help you return to your job. If you're like most people, you leave your job 30 times a second. Your job might be to remember to look up. Your job might be to soften your voice so that you're not in people's face. Your job is what you return to, not to our understandable need to be marvelous, good, enlightened, inspired, and everything else that I at least want to be. So we have to take our little star syndrome and we need to like gently have it sit next to us and keep returning our focus. For this reason, I've chosen to model other people's poems, because to put our heart and our children and our creativity out into the world is a whole other workshop. It's much easier if you're doing someone else's poem. So I'm going to start with just an example of how not to do poetry, something I've been learning in spades. With the Whitman line, there was a child went forth every day. This is what you don't do. There was a child went forth every day, and every object he saw, that object he became. Working too hard, pushing the poem, not trusting the words, fake enthusiasm so you'll stay with me. So how do we correct this? So that I can simply say, there was a child went forth every day, and the first object he looked upon, that object he became. And I would like everybody before we begin to just do this. Would you look at anything in the room where you now are? Just look at it, your light, your curtains that you were going to have fixed. Now, let the object look at you. And what does it see? And now look back at the screen. So what we want to do is to see, observe, share words, and also allow ourselves to be seen. This means we constantly have to let go of the things that aren't working and focusing on what does. So our focus tonight will be how to make the poem be paramount rather than us being wonderful performers. We will be. And you know what? If you just get all nervous and freak out, it's fine. Nerves are good. And we will talk about that at the end. If you weren't nervous, in my opinion, you'd be crazy. This is a big deal. We're online. Lots of people are watching us. You should be nervous. We got a lot to do. So befriending our nerves and knowing how that goes is important. So I'm going to ask everybody, if you can easily get it, to go to the second poem. And Wayne is going to model an exercise called Saying It for Sense, using David Wagner's wonderful poem, Walt Whitman Bathing. And I will give you a context for the middle of the poem, because we're not going to do whole poems. We're just going to do the poems as exercises. Wayne has one job: to speak the poem for sense. He doesn't need to look at the camera. He can. He just needs to speak it, to see what the words are saying. The hardest thing in this is not to jump to interpretation. What is the poem saying? So we read it for sense for ourselves. And if I were to do the beginning of this poem, it would be something like this. After his stroke, he would walk into the woods on sunny days and take off all his clothes slowly. So I'm looking at the poem. I realize that Walt Whitman has had a stroke and that his life as a poet is radically changed. The other thing I know right away from just what the poem is Walt Whitman is much bigger than his poetry. And you may not know this, but he was a nurse in the Civil War. He cared about his community. So what really matters here is that Wayne is just going to find out what the poem is saying. Okay, Wayne?
Thank you, Karen.
So you're just going to speak, and Wayne is starting from the middle of the second stanza.
I am. I'm starting at the highlight.
It's highlighted, or it's green in your copy if you have it online.
He would sit down on the bank and stare at the water for an hour, as if expecting something to emerge, some new reflection in place of the old. Meanwhile, he would examine the postures of wildflowers, the workings of small leaves, holding them close to his pale eyes, while mumbling inaudibly. He would dress then, helping his left side with his right as patiently as he might have dressed the wounded or the dead, and would lead himself toward home like a dear companion.
So for me, the most powerful thing we can do right now is to reflect in public together. And what Wayne's simply reading the words of this poem, which is deeply trustworthy. Some poems are not trustworthy. This is a trustworthy poem. You don't need to do anything to this poem. This wonderful line about tenderly escorting those parts of ourselves that no longer work. Now, Wayne, if I hadn't interrupted to comment, would ask himself when that was done, so how did that go? Did I accomplish my job? Did I learn something about the poem and what it was trying to say? So Wayne, I'm just going to ask you that.
So I think when you slow it down, you accomplish your goal, which is not only to get the poem across, but give people a chance to really listen and hear and get to internalize what's being said instead of racing through the poem, and creating your own breaks in that poem, letting the poem breathe a little bit, and not exactly reading it as it's on the page, but as it feels comfortable with your breath.
Couldn't have said it better. Now we're going to do something harder. So notice that when you respect a poet or a writer, that what they observe is more important even than what you know, because this is, I have seen Wayne present his own poetry, and this was a radical departure from what he knows as his style that works for him. So that's important. Now, this is harder because this time Wayne has to share. So this time he's going to read the same section. Actually, Wayne, I'm going to ask you to just read the last 4 lines, starting from, he would dress then. After he leaves the water, it's the last, he would dress then. Are you with me? His left side?
Yeah.
Okay. And this time, Wayne is going to do the difficult task of looking up into the camera focus as he reads, which may mean he loses his place. And it may not, he's very accomplished, but it's a whole, the focus is totally different. Now we're sharing the poem with other people, with the reciprocity. So it's not about us and our relationship with the poem. It's about us and our public self relating to the world through the poem. So he's going to do 4 lines, and his only job is to not do what he did so well 30 seconds ago. He's just going to try to share the words and focus his visual attention. Okay.
He would dress then, helping his left side with his right, as patiently as he might have dressed the wounded or the dead, and would lead himself toward home like a dear companion.
So as listeners, notice the difference of the affect. And this is a very experienced, very good public presenter. The affect meaning, notice how when we need to be seen and heard, that the poem recedes and the quality of you, the speaker, is more important. The visual, our seeing it, processes 220,000 signals a second. The poor ears, they process 20,000 signals a second. So I can look at Wayne and I'm looking at his Yankees banner and I'm looking at his t-shirt, and this is just the nature of public presentation. Now, Wayne had said earlier about going slowly enough on Zoom, but also in public. You need to take extra care. Zoom clips your voice, so its resonance and the vowels all become like a robot. And you need to compensate for this. The best way I know to slow down is the hardest thing I'm going to ask Wayne to model yet. He has a harder job. He wants to create pictures in you, the viewer, the listener. So he's not going to worry about the poem. He did his homework. He's not going to worry about his gaze because he'll forget about it and he can't do 2 things at once. He's going to focus all his attention on helping you create a picture of what he's talking about. And this is called absorption time. Absorption time has 3 parts. You breathe in the line, you speak it on the exhalation, and then you wait. You let it land. And I'll say a little bit more about that later, but let's just watch how this works as you're practicing it. Go ahead, Wayne. Same lines from the beginning. You only want to create a picture of us, of him dressing himself, of looking at the wildflowers and being such a beautiful line, a nursery for metaphors that he no longer is. He wants to create a picture in the listener.
He would dress then, helping his left side with his right, as patiently as he might have dressed the wounded or the dead, and would lead himself toward home like a dear companion.
So this is the most difficult thing. And when you do it well, you need to decide for yourself as a poet whether it's better to look at the screen or not. There was a wonderful reading with Wayne and Octavio Quintagilo, and forgive me if I pronounce his name wrong, and this magnificent poet who writes about the difficulty of borderlands chose to look down and read from his book most of the time, and those poems sang. And so this is a decision each of you has to make. And we're on Zoom, practice. Have the courage to record yourself, face the wonderful and ugly truth, and then get on with it. Because if you can create a picture in the listener, you are in the co-creative process where we make a poem together in community. So, and one of the things that happens is our affect flattens of necessity, and we can restore our affect. I'll give a quick example from Emily Dickinson. A bird came down the walk. It did not think I saw. That's the poem. Now, what I love about this poem is it sounds like a bird, a robin specifically, hopping, because that's the way she wrote it. And also Emily gives you all these signs and signals about what to do. She goes big dashes, which whole books have been written about. She has very short lines, big line breaks. But listen just to the rhythm of this poem, and with me superimposing the fact that I like the way the rhythm of it is. A bird came down the walk. It did not think I saw. It bit an angleworm in half and ate the fellow raw. So that is an interpretive version. And again, this is up to you. But I like that about the. I just like that. So I don't get all holier than thou and, be true to the poet. And, you do all this work, friends, and then you just rip, because it will anyway. So we're going to do the second part of our work here. And that's what the poem is asking. And a good poet will give you tons of clues. They will give you visual clues, line breaks, which means in most cases, except for enjambment, which is where a line wants you to immediately go into the line after it. And usually the poet indicates this by a lack of punctuation, or by a line that's so long, like Whitman. Even God can't say those poems because you don't have enough air. So the poet will give you cues, visual cues about when to shut up, when to pause, when to stop. And she or he will also give you clues about whether you're supposed to keep going. Also, the sound, which is what Wayne is going to do, will give you massive clues in a bunch of things we're not going to get to. Automatopoeia, which is the word sounds like what it is. And it's not like a bow wow for dog. It's like there lives the dearest freshness, deep down things. So the freshness sounds fresh. So we're going to go to the Hopkins poem. And Gerard Manley Hopkins is a magnificent conductor of sound. He uses diphthongs to go, ew, ew, ah, ow, ah. Diphthongs are double vowels, and he uses them very consciously. If he wants you to speak quickly, he will use he'll use a lot of short vowels. He won't use diphthongs. He'll use a lot of plosives, tick, tick, T, P, D, R. He'll use a lot of resonance. Resonance is N's, R's. Why do men now not wreck his rod or reckon the world? Why do men now not wreck his rod? Resonance gives gravitas to sound. So Wayne is going to now go to God's Grandeur. And sorry to be such a downer, but we are living in one long elegy lament. And I am dedicating, it's really important to choose poems and read poems in a way that are appropriate to the times. And this is one of the best Hopkins poems I know for this, about we are wrecking the world because we're us. So how do we resurrect it? So Wayne is going to read, and Wayne, I would like you to pick which sound cue you're going to focus on when you read Why Do Men Now? What do you want to do for yourself?
Okay.
Would you tell us what it is? I'll give you a second to think. It's not a test.
No, I'm going for that resonance, I think.
Okay, so just to clarify to you, resonance means vibrating N's, M's, R's, so that like vibrato in song, they linger. And usually when we practice resonance, we bludgeon it the first time, then it gets easier. Not that you'll do that, dear. Good luck. After all that, good luck.
No pressure, no pressure.
No pressure.
Okay, I'm starting from the highlighted section, which might be bolded or green on your page. Why do men then now not wreck his rod? Generations have trod, have trod, have trod, and all is seared with trade, bleared, smeared with toil, and wears man's smudge, and shares man's smell. The soil is bare now, nor can foot feel, being shod. And for all this, nature is never spent. There lives the dearest freshness deep down things.
Now I'm going to ask him to do it immediately again and let all of that go. The great thing about the body is the body wants to be happy. The body wants to be open. The body wants to be comfortable. And if you did something that it liked, it hadn't occurred to it, resonance, it'll choose that. It won't choose the habitual. But when you're performing poetry, you can't possibly be worrying about resonating your ends. You just can't. So Wayne's going to do it again. And I'm going to ask him before he does, what do you like about this and what do you want us to hear via you about Hopkins and what he wanted to share?
Well, there's a message here. I think, again, if you listen carefully, it's really just beyond all of that, the resonance or the onomatopoeia, but there's something being said here. There's a contrast between that first stanza and the second stanza with, here's all this, we're dragging you down with all this stuff, and then the end, I know we're not getting to the end, but he goes, bright wings, there's hope. And so there's a real contrast within this poem. And I think if, we were to read through it, we would see and feel that contrast of the downer that the first stanza is, and then that up note that it kind of ends on, of a little bit of hope. And that's really, I think, if you're reading the full thing through, the poem conveys.
Yes, and also I didn't do the beginning, but he starts positively effervescent. The world is charged with the grandeur of God. It will flame out like shining from shook foil. He's excited, the world's good. Then, bummer. Then, as Wayne pointed out, there's a huge tone shift which does begin, but for all this. So if we think of this poem, and then we think of all we are going through and have been through in the past few months, we allow the poem to evoke, but for all this. And that does, I agree, thanks for pointing it out, that starts the upward climb into how do we dig ourselves out of.
Yeah, that's the real turn.
Right, and also in poetry and in poetry, there's always something called a balance of attention, which is if you get down into the snake pit, you just will never get out. And it's just scary. You always have to have a balance of goodness and bad, like a plane taking off. The plane fights the ground and then it ascends into this lyric rhapsody. If you don't know that it's going to go up, or know that Hopkins destroyed all his poems and then rewrote this because he didn't just want to be a priest, he wanted to be a poet. The more you know, the more the resurrection happens. So enough blathering on about my love of Hopkins. So sorry, I get carried away with Gerard Manley. So
Okay.
Wayne, would you just not worry about any of the sound cues
Yeah.
and just do what you mentioned? Head for that acknowledgement of the real and execute the tone shift.
Why do men then now not wreck his rod? Generations have trod, have trod, have trod, and all is seared with trade, bleared, smeared with toil, and wears man's smudge and shares man's smell. The soil is bare now, nor can foot feel being shod. And for all this, nature is never spent. There lives the dearest freshness deep down things.
How was that for you?
I wanted to keep going.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
The great thing about Hopkins, too, is he has these little marks over the words he wants you to stress because he doesn't want you to do his poem the wrong way. But we're not going to go there. We're going to move on to the next and third part. How am I doing this time?
Can I interrupt for a second?
Oh,
Karen?
please do.
Just so you know, I mean, when I'm reading it, I know you can't see, but I marked my poem as well with just my own little marks, because I think you have to, especially if you're performing your poetry or anyone else's poetry. You've got to rehearse that, and you got to mark the page, so that way you're emphasizing where that feeling is, or you're emphasizing where that tone is, or you're emphasizing where that turn is with that second stanza. So yeah, he might have done that on his copy, but so must the poet who's now reading it 100 years later.
Thank you for bringing up the gift of the listener's attention. Job. It is not, in my opinion, okay to wing it. It's not okay to end up in a scramble and pick your favorite poems. All of you here tonight are giving us the gift of your time. What could be more valuable? And attention. So we need to make it worth your while, worthwhile. Speaking of which, I got to do this great thing, which is I got to coach high school graduations this year because they were all virtual. You want to see somebody nervous? Look at the salutatorian or valedictorian who's going to MIT and has never had to talk in his or her life. And it was a great experience. But these were kids, and they missed their graduation, and they were upset. And they didn't want to wear masks when they practiced or hugged each other. They just wanted to be kids. And one of the great things about that was I realized poems have different agendas based on the time you're in. So we're going to shift now to your responsibility to the situation. Graduation, my responsibility to you tonight as giving us an evening of your time. So the responsibility in the Maya Angelou poem, which is poem 5. Maya Angelou did not write it as a graduation poem. It was used at just about every graduation, and the magnificent high school principal I learned from every day chose to do this instead of make a speech because she figured her kids did not want to listen to her. And so this is a poem where you do superimpose an agenda. And the agenda that I'm going to superimpose on Wayne is to encourage an imaginary class of graduating students in the middle of Black Lives Matter, being stripped of what they worked for 12 years for, and to give them some hope that the grown-ups haven't messed up the world. And the fact that she's African American and everything has a kind of call and response, Wayne and I cannot do because it would be offensive. But we can know this and know that at least people who normally wouldn't hear the magnificent Maya Angelou will get to hear her message in an encouraging way. So he does have a goal. It's called his objective. His objective is to encourage the listener. And I think, Wayne, let's do all of the lines, because up through They only imagined the highlighted lines. There's something we haven't talked about called drop-in time. Drop-in time is what you need to know about yourself. How long does it take you to be you? My drop-in time is about 10 minutes, so forgive me if I was incoherent at the beginning. It takes me a long time to get used to the medium. This is a poem that requires drop-in time. Wayne has a very quick drop-in time. He's a high school teacher, in addition to being many other things, a father, a friend, a poet. But he can drop in quite fast. I'm going to give him more lines to drop in, though, because his job is a job that he and I talked about yesterday, and he doesn't quite agree with the poem, or that he would say this in this context.
My wish for you is that you continue to be who and how you are, to astonish a mean world with your acts of kindness. Continue to allow humor to lighten the burden of your tender heart. Continue in a society dark with cruelty to let the people hear the grandeur of God in the peals of your laughter. Continue to let your eloquence elevate the people to heights they had only imagined.
And now we get into personal style. So I'm going to do a bad imitation of what this marvelous high school. So the kids were on these big drive-in movie theaters. And this is what the principal did with this poem. My wish for you is that you continue to be what and who you are. Sorry, I gotta put on my glasses, the return. To be who and how you are. To astonish a mean world with your acts of kindness, continue. Allow humor to lighten the burden of your tender heart. Continue in a society it is dark with cruelty. Let the people hear the grandeur of God and the peals of your laughter. Yes, you, the J, laugh. It's okay. This is what she did, and it was magnificent. True to her, true to Maya Angelou, true to the people she was speaking with. So we're just going to do one last part. And this is in honor of the evening and in honor of the marvelous Julia Alvarez, who is one of the few people brave enough, Latinx poet, brave enough, thank God a woman, to write about now and ask questions and say a line I frankly don't hear enough, which is, I don't know. What are we supposed to do? I don't know. What's going to happen? I don't know. And so Wayne and I are just going to do this together and then go on into an exercise that we will all do, and then we'll take questions and answers. So it's poem 6 for those of you who are following. You can just listen to us. Wayne, why don't you do 1? I'll do 2. And I think we're going to stop after viral because I can't see the clock, but I think we're almost out of our half hour. Are we, Caitlin?
Exactly at the half hour,
Oh,
Karen.
I love having a good sense of time.
Wow.
Okay.
That's
Okay, so
impressive.
let's just do it through Poetry Go Viral, because the exercise I want to do with people who are joining us tonight will take 5 minutes.
Sure. Do you want to read the title and then I'll read the first line?
Sure, I'll read the title.
Okay.
How will this pandemic affect poetry? By Julia Alvarez.
Will lines be 6 feet apart?
Will these hexameters be heroic, like Homer's?
Will each word have to be masked?
Will there be poetry in security?
Will there be enough poetry to go around?
Will poems be the preferred form of travel?
Will we undertake odysseys searching for Ithacas inside us?
Will poetry go viral? Continue, it's such a good poem. Will poetry go viral?
Will disease infect us?
Will it help build up antibodies against indifference?
Will poems be the only safe places where we can gather together?
Enter their immense silences.
See snakes slithering inside sestinas.
Listen to nightingales singing on the boughs of odes.
Hark, a lark in the terza rima.
A hawk in a haiku.
What if only poetry will see us through?
What if this poem is the vaccine already working inside you? So Wayne and I talked yesterday about the difficulty of really asking a question, not phoning it in. So maybe we can start the chat later with what if maybe the poem is the vaccine working inside us. Now that the lawn is open at the Walt Whitman birthplace, we can all get vaccinated for our souls. So I would like everybody to just think of two lines, these two lines from Emily Dickinson, and I will feed them to you if you forget them. I never saw a moor. I never saw the sea. If you don't know what a moor is, I didn't either. It's a big wasteland in Thomas Hardy and a lot of other places, and there's a lot of little heath plants. And there aren't any near Amherst where Emily Dickinson wrote. So I never saw a moor, I never saw the sea. And this is a poem about how we don't have to go anywhere but inside our own minds. The purpose of this visualization is for you, the poet, to do an exercise where you see yourself as your best possible performing self. Now, for those of you who don't visualize or think it's too new age or are sound focused and kinesthetic learners, don't sweat it if you don't see pictures inside your mind. Don't worry if all the people you never want to see in your life again show up when you close your eyes. Just try it. If you can't picture it in your mind, and what you're going to be picturing, by the way, is you performing a poem the way you want to do it. That's what you're going to be picturing, your ideal poetry performer presenter. Any question you can't answer, don't care about, or can't think of, don't worry, just move on. And Wayne, remind me to talk about the return, but not right now, okay? So, for those who are comfortable, we're going to visualize what, for lack of a better word, I call the spirit of poetry. And this is the spirit that makes us poets, that lives inside the world of words. And you don't need to know what it means other than that. So for those who care to, would you just sit and close your eyes? And if you don't want to, you can look down at the computer and just breathe in through your nose and breathe out through your mouth. Breathe in through your nose. Breathe out through your mouth. And if breathing makes you nervous, don't do it. I mean, you have to. Breathe in through your nose. Breathe out through your mouth. And imagine that your mind drops into your heart. And you're going to see yourself in a long hallway. It's up to you whether it's lit or not. And there are a lot of entrances and doors and exits off the hallway, and there's also a door to the outdoors. And so you're walking down the hallway, and you are walking to your ideal presentation space. It might be out in the woods, it might be in front of 10,000 people in a tent in Jonesboro, Tennessee. It might be at the Whitman birthplace, but it's a place where you feel that you as a poet will do a good job and people will be happy. So I'm just gonna give you a second to walk into the space. Is it warm or cold, urban or not? Is it in a theater or not? And now, see where the audience sits, and one at a time, to your great surprise and delight, come all of the people who have made you the artist you are. Your students, your parents, your coaches, your mentors, poets who've come before, visionaries, And they're all here for you. And they're sitting or standing or picnicking or whatever they're doing in the audience. And they just want it to be good for you. They really don't care if it's good for them. You might have some uninvited guests. And if people show up who've traumatized your performance, they're there. Just leap over them and look at somebody else. Easier said than done. And feel your body standing there, looking comfortable, feeling at ease, or as much as you can be. And in your own mind or sound, think the words, I never saw a moor. I never saw the sea. And I'm going to stop talking for about 15 seconds and just see if you can get either the sound, sense, or feeling bodily of you at your best sharing words. And now just gently open your eyes. And if I've interrupted you, that's the way life is, sorry. And I do want to speak about the return while we're in this kind of quiet space. The return is a technique I learned from the great teacher, actor Michael Chekhov, who believed, along with Stanislavski, that acting is a sacred spiritual process. It doesn't have to be all woo-woo or religious, but it is about becoming a whole person. And then I got this via the wonderful actor Kevin Kline and another coach. And the idea is the return, which is you have to forgive yourself 30 times every 2 to 3 seconds. What do you forgive yourself for? For all the stuff that didn't go right that you wished would. And when Kevin Kline was on Broadway doing Pirates of Penzance, he had to come on, sing a high G, leap over a bunch of pirates, and not crack his voice. So every night when he ran on stage, he would trip on a pirate. His voice would crack. And then he'd stand on the stage and go, ha ha. And it was the most wonderful entrance because the only thing he had to eventually do was return to that note. And the great Joe Chaikin had really noble ideas for what theater should be as a form of transcendence. And he worked with Sam Shepard and they would talk and they say, I can't do it, I just can't do it. And Sam Shepard would go, so forgive yourself. You can't do it, forgive yourself. And so this process of just, okay, S happens, it happens all the time. I was doing a birthday message today for a friend. Every siren in the world and lawn blower was on. Something honked outside and my coffee spilled and I stepped on my glasses. Stuff happens. So you return. So Wayne, I'm just going to ask you, because this idea interested you yesterday, and then we'll turn it out over to other people. What gets you waylaid and to what do you return? You have to something to return to, by the way.
Well, as a high school teacher, that whole idea of the return is a survival technique, really, because you don't know how a day is going to go. You might plan it, but it does not matter. And it changes from day to day, period to period, second to second. We were talking earlier about thinking on your feet and being able to let go what just happened and recollect yourself and move through that and have a plan, have a backup plan, have a second, a third plan, whatever it is that allows you to feel prepared, either mentally or actually on the paper or physically, to be prepared, to prepare yourself and to be practiced enough to know that it's not going to go as you practiced. And that's okay, because honestly, I think the only one that really notices that is you. a lot of times the audience doesn't pick up on all of that unless you bring it up. And I've noticed that just as being a classroom teacher, the kids don't remember those little trip ups or where all of a sudden it's got to be a change of plans. And so if your performance doesn't go exactly as you had hoped, or there has to be a change to your plan, that's fine. Nobody else really knows that except you and the person who's facilitating or curating it. And this happened last week when I was presenting for the Walt Whitman Walking with Whitman series. I thought I had a longer period of time, and George Wallace, messaged me, hey, last poem. And I was like, oh, sure. And, immediately you go to the last poem, and, there's a whole stack of poems that I had in case it had to go longer, in case it had to go shorter, and you prepare for that. And you don't let anyone see you sweat too much, if possible.
Actually, what I return to is very different. And people are going to see me sweat all the time, but I return to a mantra, which is more ease, more ease, more ease, because my whole life has been a situation of being just too much Karen. In my eagerness as a teacher to share, we insist we will do anything to maintain people's attention. And that's great when you're teaching. It is not great when you're a poet, and it's not great when you're a performer. So when I just say more ease, I don't know how it happens, but I have a good body. I have a responsive body. So if something gentle inside me says more ease, I won't be in your face. Well, I will, but not the way I would have been. And if somebody tells me to sit back in a chair, which I did the whole time almost, instead of do this, because this doesn't serve you, frankly, or me. So I return to the mantra, and I return to dedication. Because then it's not about me. So sorry if I embarrass you, Beth Crane. Beth Crane is somebody I knew when she was 16. Her mother got me through teaching high school. And Beth Crane is now a midwife and always was a healer and had this calm, gentle nature. And I thought, oh my God, Beth Crane is here. This is for her. And it just takes a lot of pressure off you if you dedicate, and also you don't mess up. I dedicated my work to the 3 dear friends and storytellers and writers I lost in COVID. And it made me much better, because really all I had to do was do the best I could, which is all we can do. We can just nobody gets up in the morning and says, I'm going to be a bad poet. We're all just doing the best we can. And how that gets to be enough, what Wayne's saying is critical. We are not transparent. We are not those plastic figures in a biology lab where all the organs show. They don't know. They're worried about themselves. They being the audience. They're worried about their life. So with that, Wayne, do you want to add anything? Because I learned so much from you.
There's a good book I read a while ago called Who Moved My Cheese? And it's excellent because it speaks to that things are going to change beyond your control, and you have to be adaptable to that. And we're all the mice, and someone else is in charge of that cheese. And today the cheese might be in front of you, but tomorrow the cheese might be behind you. And that means you need to spin around, and you need to accept that the cheese is moved. And now it's time to perform to that cheese there that's behind you, or whatever the goal is to accomplish. And yeah, you spoke a little bit earlier, we call it in teaching wait time, when you're asking a question, to allow that a little bit of a breathing room, so that you're not frantic. And the same holds true with performing poetry, is that wait time. You want absorption, you want a pause, you want time. You need time as the person presenting, and the audience needs time. As the teacher, I need time. As the audience, my students need time. And there's a lot of parallels. There's a lot of similarities in both worlds. There's a lot of overlap.
So we didn't get a lot of practice in what's called absorption time. And maybe the next time, hopefully we can do this. But I want to mention something called the zone, because the workshop was originally broadcast about the spirit of the poem in your own poetry style. Now, the zone is what you need to make you your best self. So when I'm nervous, which I am always, but especially when I'm performing, here's what happens. I'm hungry, I'm cold. I don't know what it is out, but I'm cold. I need caffeine. I have to go to the bathroom. I will rush. Always, always, always. I can meditate from here to eternity and I will always be too fast. It's my zone. So I do everything possible to accept and protect myself. I have 4 bags of food, lots of hot liquid, many layers of clothing because I'm also always cold. I have a backup plan upon backup plan. I drive people crazy. But this is what I need because I'm a tense person who cares too much. And I'm a nervous person and I have spent my life trying to calm this machine down and it doesn't. So the zone is, the other great thing about it is that I have enough energy to take care of you, myself, and I can fix things. I'm the mechanic of stuff. I'm a craft mechanic. That's what's good about being hyper. So you need to know what happens to you when you're nervous. Do everything you can to protect that needy, nervous self. Some people go numb, they go flat. Other people become inaudible. Other people go hide inside. So, you just need to know it and protect it. It's called protecting the gift. I've been gifted with a great voice, a responsive body, a brain, thank God I had one, that loves language. And it's my responsibility to take care of that. And so whatever you need to be in the zone, which is the you I hope you were able to visualize. You as your best self. And hey, life is unfortunately not as long as we thought, but it's long enough. So I wish everybody well. And Caitlin, what shall we do now? Because some of these questions might be better for me or for Wayne. Okay. So if someone has directed a question to Wayne, would you use his name? Otherwise, I may attempt an answer.
Yes, absolutely. I'm just going to come back for a second. Karen and Wayne, oh my goodness, that was amazing. That was inspiring beyond just if you're a poet. I'm not a poet, and I'm taking so much from this. And I had the opportunity to watch you practice yesterday, and that spirit that you have, the two of you together, that connectivity, it just came through today so powerfully again. And it's just a beautiful thing. So before we even do the questions, I'd love it if everyone could unmute for a minute and we can give a big round of applause for both of them because I'm sure you're as inspired as I am too. All right. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh. I do this every week and I'm just going to say this was not my job description in the beginning.
He's an artist.
I've been talking to you, Karen, like a lot of weeks in a row, and every time you've given me these little hints, and then today it's all together for a lot of people to share and enjoy and, become part of their performance. So thank you so much. I also want to say I have the links in the chat, but I would love it if everyone who had questions, if you want to come on video and ask your questions, you can do that. Or if you'd like to go in the chat and if it's for Wayne, if it's for Karen, just make sure we know who it's for, and you can have your questions in there, and I'll read them to you, Karen and Wayne. All right. And you can go ahead with your questions now, if you're ready, if you're brave.
Ah, it's that silence.
Yes, sound of silence. All right, well, we do have some, Pamela Ross says, truly fabulous. I would have to agree. Kelly Powell says, truly meaningful. Love the part about coming back to the individual centers. That is beautiful.
Can I ask Kelly a question?
Absolutely.
Kelly, what does that mean for you? Because I'm sure that what your center is very different. That's a wonderful phrase. So Kelly, would you either, if you're willing to be on video or chat, what does that mean to you to come back to your individual center? Mine is a moving center.
See. All right, we'll give Kelly a second to come
Yeah,
back.
let's give Kelly a, but this thing about a moving center is we are never, I saw a wonderful show called Moving Out years ago on Broadway, because one of the things I do is coach Broadway actors, and I was fortunate. And the dancers, when they land from a high lift, are placed on one foot, and then they're supposed to do an arabesque. And I noticed, because I was very close to the stage, one dancer's leg doing this every time she landed, and she was a fabulous dancer. And what she and other people say is, you are never in balance. You are always seeking equilibrium. Peter Brook, you're walking a tightrope and you're always about to fall off. You're on a plane, it's always off course. So this sense of the center means different things for different people. So I'm curious, or if everyone would just ask themselves, what does that mean? If this is a useful idea, what do you return to when you start to go astray and your foot wobbles and you're falling? And how do you, like that wonderful line in the David Wagner poem, gently, tenderly take your whole left side that doesn't work?
Oh, I could unmute now.
There we go. Hi, Kelly.
Hi,
Yes.
Kelly. Talk to
Hi,
us,
how you
please.
doing? Well, I always just tell myself to come back to center, but you have a mantra, and Wayne had another experience teaching that he would just pull himself back in to wherever he was headed. And then
when you instruct yourself, Kelly, does it happen?
I don't know, I'm just kind of mean about it.
You're mean about it. No, seriously.
I just say to myself, or I do it out of habit, and I say, well, this is not going well, do something else, or it's like a wheel. The wheel is going, and there's a center to a wheel, what's connected to the machine. So the body is a machine, and the wheel is always turning. So it's more into the heart center. It's like, are people not responding? You're always checking the temperature. Whenever you're in life, it doesn't matter if you're performing. It's just
yeah.
It's just constant.
It is constant. And I do want to mention, if you're brave enough to send your question or your poem out into the world, when you watch it land, again, this is why everybody should teach middle school, not high school. When you watch it land, it's like, or it doesn't land. So we think that it doesn't land. And I was teaching at an urban school a few years ago, and I was on the New York subway. And this kid in a hoodie looks down and goes, "You lady." And I thought, oh God, what? And he said, you told me that story about Cupid and so I love that thing. Now, I remember when I told that story, and they were sitting there like, kill me now. So we don't know. We don't know how it's landing. When people are thinking, they look weird. And if they're not paying attention to you, this is what you want. They're thinking about their own life. So thank you, Kelly. The wheel is a great image. And everybody does have to find their own. But we have to let go of how disappointing it is that we've done all this work and it doesn't seem to be going so well. And sometimes it really isn't.
Thank you, Karen. And thank you, Kelly.
Thanks.
And let's see, I'm gonna make sure we go in the right order here. Okay. Elliot Rosen says, as a person who spent a lot of the last 50 years speaking in front of audiences, The lessons of speaking poetry is exactly aligned with any kind of speaking and trying to be true to the message. And then Elliot says, "Hi, Karen, you did this."
I wish I could claim credit for Elliot, but he came out of the womb fully blown and absolutely unique, with a voice that sounds like God the Father in the Old Testament. Thank you, Elliot. I didn't see your name. Hi, honey. To your grandchildren.
So many fans. And then we have Pamela Ross, who says, "Do you memorize your poetry or hold a copy in your hands?"
I never memorize my poetry because then I memorize everything, I should say, and then it goes right out. It goes right out. I won't go into me memorizing. I do memorize it. Rarely though, because I always need props. And by props, I mean, I need a paper, I need my pencil, I need to retreat inside my own gaze. And when St. John's Gospel was performed by the wonderful British actor on Broadway, somebody said, you know, this is what people always say when they're not, "How did you learn all those words?" And he said, "I didn't." So he did an 1.5-hour show of St. John's Gospel, and he had spent 4 years doing the grunt work of learning it. And he had cue cards in every drawer, on every table, and every desk. And the only thing he practiced was looking up after he'd checked the cue cards. Now, there are people who are good memorizers, and they tend to be kinesthetic learners. They remember the rhythm of language. They remember the speed of things. So I don't memorize. This is a decision you need to make for yourself. I did a performance in Central Park this weekend, and I memorized it up the wazoo because my dear friend Ed Stivender said I better, and he was right. I will tell you that very few of the words came out verbatim, but the Hans Christian Andersen Society wanted it verbatim, so they were happy the few times I did land on it. The problem with memorization is that it gets canned, and we try to repeat our last best performance instead of respond to the moment in front of us. So that's just what I know about that, but it's very, very person specific. You need to feel comfortable so that you can keep your focus on the listener and off yourself. So whatever helps you do that, fine. One thing to Kelly too, as she and I seem to use the same voice, there's something called rigor in the creative process, and you called it like yelling or, but rigor is a great creative discipline, and we do need to instruct, order, demand ourselves sometimes. It's not a bad thing. So that's just a thought that I wanted to add to Kelly's lovely image of the turning wheel and dropping into the heart.
Thank you so much.
And then we have a comment from Melissa Fadul. And Melissa, I remember you from Juan Felipe Herrera a few weeks ago. You joined us for that. That was amazing. You read one of your poems. And she says, "I'm a high school teacher, and that happens to me all the time with my students." I think you were talking about Wayne, probably.
Oh, Wayne, talk, commiserate, put this woman on, put this woman on. Because believe it or not, teachers, I'm gonna stop you. Teachers make the best presenters. So I do a lot of work in corporations with financial people and IT. I, the digitally impaired, coach IT. And one of the things that taught are good communicators. And poets who teach tend to be better communicators. So Wayne and I'm sorry, your name, Emily, what was her name?
Melissa.
Yeah, would you guys just use some airtime about what you know about how to keep going in the presence of the most important work in the world, frankly?
How are you, Melissa?
I'm good. I'm good.
What subject do you teach?
I teach advanced placement psychology and classical literature.
Okay. I'm AP biology, anatomy, physiology, research, science.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very, very difficult time, but I could totally relate to the subway story. I had one of my advanced placement psychology students wrote an email to me after remote learning ended, it's a senior class, she's graduating, and thanking me for everything. And the most ironic thing is that I'm still new teaching it. It's only my second year. My degrees are in English literature and poetry. I have an MFA in poetry, and I love psychology, so I took it on. And I didn't know these students at all. The last year when I taught AP psychology, I had 9th grade students, and then they turned into 12th graders and I had them again. But this year, this was a brand new set of students. And so I was coming in totally fresh, just like them. But there was such a trust that they put in me and that I put in them, that we just got along very, very well. So the student wrote this email thanking me. And the most ironic thing is that half the time I didn't think she was even paying attention, you know? And it's like, I remember this and I remember that. I'm like, you do? I don't remember that at all. So and that for me is equilibrium. You know, that makes me come back to my center, especially times like this. You know, it's like, the best thing I could do right now is remember what my students can offer me, and I can offer that to myself as well in moments that I need. You could probably relate to that.
Sadly, yeah. That's what this pandemic kind of takes away from us is that kind of interaction, that kind of that internal and external check on, am I doing this right? Are they getting it? And are they kind of coming back with some kind of feedback that lets you know, okay. And sometimes you don't get that feedback for a few years, where somebody will email you. I had an email just like last week from a student who graduated in 2010, who's now a science teacher and remembers all these things that we did, and she's looking to change positions and, you know, maybe come out to Long Island again and looking for, you know, just a recommendation, you know, where can she apply? And I remembered her, and I was like, oh my God, you know, I can't believe that you remember all of this stuff from, you know, I had her as a freshman. It was 2007. So sometimes it's not just like that 1 year kind of thing. You'll get that feedback like that a decade later. Yeah,
I've been doing this for 17 years, and I still have students who email me from other schools I taught at. It's unbelievable. And it really does, for me, that centers me. That's where I find my equilibrium. You know, I'm able to maintain that balance. Now, if I can only maintain that outside the building, you know, it's easier to do with them, honestly.
100%.
You know? Yeah.
100%. You close that door to your classroom, and that is your domain for 40 minutes or whatever it is. And you don't realize that impact that you're making at that moment, but yeah, it comes back. Which tells you, oh, keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Yeah, same.
I want to add something about trust and relationship. And first of all, my daughter is teaching, and the hardest thing I think she's ever done is teach online. That 24/7 adjustment. So thank you, both of you. I was not having to do this. This is all about relationship. And one of the ways I was going to format tonight, there are 5 relationships going on in any poet. There's your relationship with the poem. There's a relationship with yourself, your public self and your private self. There's your relationship with the writer. You know, there's your relationship with the audience in front of you. There's all these relationships. There's your relationship with the camera. Yeah. Could never be a film actor. I don't make love to the camera. All that stuff. I'm never able. It's just a distraction. I can't even see it anyway. So we have all these relationships going on, and the psychological, since you majored in psychology, is that trust. The great thing about Whitman, if any of you are lucky enough to read there, is it is a trustworthy audience. You can trust the words. The audience will do most of the work. You don't need to do anything to make your poetry work. They are trustworthy. Many audiences are not. Trust is not a blanket thing, but it took me, I would say, over 50 years to trust the words. I thought it had to be my engaged delivery of them. The words are enough. Trust the words. Trust the listener. And if somebody or a situation is not trustworthy, put on your armor. Protect yourself. So this whole thing about trust has been really, really up in every area. So thank you for using both of those words, both of you. And the open question to people who are still with us is, what is it going to take to try trust again? Are people trustworthy? If they're not, what do you do? And just because we have to trust, we are so in all of this together. I mean, we're in this meeting together, but we're in our lives together. So the Sermon on the Mount is now over. Any other questions, Caitlin?
We don't have any other questions in the chat. If anyone wants to just jump in at all.
This is Beth, and I just wanted to say hello to Karen and thank you for this. This has been wonderful. I love the poems that you chose to share tonight. They're really terrific choices. But I also have to correct something. I never did become a midwife, but I did work in public maternal child health, family planning, and also and then as a social worker. So I followed a slightly different path, but I also, this has been inspiring for me to revisit my writing and think about performance as well. Right now, the reading I do is Scripture on Sunday, which is its own amazing opportunity to deliver amazing poetry. So, yeah.
Well, Beth, I can still see your handwriting because I forced all of these people to do journals. And I know the little block letters. And I know what a healing force you are. And it's no surprise to me that you are doing Scripture on Sunday. But I encourage you, as a writer who I remember from 1972 or so, whatever, I remember your writing and the quality of it and the deep engagement and the simple, direct clarity of it and the musing on MUSI, on everything that matters. I would like to, Steve, I see you're on, so I'm going to go to you, but Beth, I would love to hear how this has been for you these past, especially few months since you're doing social work and public service. It's been quite a time. Steve, do you want to, I see you, dear.
Yeah, I just...
A wonderful writer, to those of you who don't know, this is Steve Turr, a fantastic writer and poet and scientist and artist. What's up?
What I want first to thank you and Wayne for doing this. I think it's very useful. And it reminded me of a few things I just wanted to share. Over the years when I was teaching origami, I eventually ended up saying over and over again to the students, and I'm not a trained teacher, perfection is a goal that should not get in the way of fun. Okay? And then this connected recently with Laura reminding me or telling me about something that Maya Angelou said, that people will not remember what you say, they will remember how you made them feel. Mm. And finally, someone told me that when you're addressing an audience or doing public speaking, people in the audience want you to succeed. Now, I don't know if that's based on science or research or anything, but it's a good thing to keep in your mind if you're the speaker, that there are people out there who want you to succeed. So that's all I want to say.
Thank you, Steve.
Beautiful. And Steve, I really like your Whitman drawing in the background there. I couldn't miss it.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Caitlin, do you have your Whitman drawing at hand?
Oh, I do.
Oh, this is time for us to appreciate the woman who is making this all happen. You have no idea what it is, nor do I, what it is to be Caitlin, but oh, pull it up. No, this is just marvelous. This is Caitlin's art, which she never gets to show because she's doing the grunt work of the world.
Karen's making me into a self-promoter like Whitman was.
Yeah, I will, but it's just marvelous. Look at the whimsy and
Beautiful.
Thank you.
say
so
more, Caitlin.
Yes, well, we sell it in our gift shop, and I made it for the 200th birthday, which was last year, of Whitman, and we celebrated that in person. It was really beautiful. We had many events over the weekend, and then this year we still had a lot of events, but they were all just like this on Zoom. But it has one of my favorite Whitman quotes, that the powerful play goes on and you may contribute a verse. You may remember that from the Robin Williams movie as well. Another great Whitman tribute. Can I tell a really quick story?
Please do.
Because I love bringing Whitman into our events too. Sometimes I feel like we're focusing on so many great things, but we forget the guy who makes it all possible for us. So this butterfly is in a photo with Whitman, and for many years, everyone thought that it was a real butterfly that he had gotten to come over and land on his finger perfectly. And people asked Whitman in interviews, was that a real butterfly? And Whitman would say, nature's drawn to me. You know, he wouldn't answer the question directly. But years after his death, people looked through his books and his notebooks and journals, and they found this butterfly that's this color, we know now because it was a black and white photo originally. And it was pressed in that book, and it was an Easter card, an Easter greeting card that has actually a hymnal on the other side of it. And it's actually in the Library of Congress now, but it's just a funny thing. And then it had a little wire around it to perch on his finger perfectly. And I kind of put it in here because when you look closely at the photograph, you can kind of see it. Just no one was looking that hard. But also, if you visit us in person, once we reopen our interpretive center, we have a wall of just Whitman photos. He had a lot of photos for someone of that time, exceptionally a lot. And that's because he knew how to self-promote himself so well. And that's what the butterfly was too. You know, nature's drawn to me. And it worked very well for him. So thank you, Karen. You know, I'll post links too. If you're interested in purchasing one, 10% of the proceeds goes to the birthplace as well. And I love supporting the birthplace that way. And I just want to say too, I was saying earlier, this wasn't part of my job description, but I love that it is my job now because I love that I get to promote people like Karen and Wayne and make sure that these events get well attended, make sure that we're growing every single week as we have been, and that people outside of just the Huntington area now have access to all of this. And we put up these videos on YouTube. They get seen by an even bigger audience going forward. This video will be up in the next few days. And we've had so many great events since the quarantine started, and tonight, exceptionally wonderful event. So thank you so much, Karen and Wayne. Oh my goodness.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody who came.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
What a real privilege. Thank you, and fun.
Yes, so much fun. Actually, let's do one more round of applause. I think we got it. I'm just feeling it right now, right?
Thank you.
So much. And I'm going to post those links one more time. And I want to say again, just thank you to everyone who donates. That's what's making this possible. That's what's been keeping us going through this quarantine. When we reopen, it will be great that we'll be able to, you know, start thinking about how we'll fund these events going further. But right now, you're keeping us alive. You're keeping the poets, and of course, Karen, who's sharing her voice with us tonight. You're keeping that going and that momentum going in the poetry community. So thank you so much. And just check out those links if you're interested. And we appreciate, and great questions too. We love that.